up close and personal, we're going to be talking with Jim Roti Sr. about the letter that he wrote to President Trump back on September 24th, 2019. And this letter is very, very impressive. And to use the Italian word, motto. And I think it's important for me to actually read the letter so everybody here hears it, because it is really a good letter. It took me back when I was reading it. And I read it a couple times, and each time I got something else out of it. So Jim did a great job. So I'm going to read it right now. It was dated September 24th, 2019. Dear Mr. President, I am a 77-year-old citizen who has voted for you and will do so again in 2020. I have prayed for you and our country, and I believe that the good Lord has given us an honest and great leader for our country. You stand for everything our founding fathers fought and gave their lives for. I was born in Italy and came to this country when I was 10 years old. My mother was born in the United States and my father was born in Italy. When we came to America, we worked hard and did not expect any government aid. There were 10 children in our family, 5 born in Europe and 5 born in the United States. We all went to private schools and learned respect for our country and our flag. Our teachers were dedicated to the American way of life, and we all graduated with the understanding that we are in all equal in God's eyes, and that freedom, which is what this nation was founded on, is precious and should be cherished at all times. The sad thing is that our children today are being brainwashed by liberal socialistic educators in our public schools and universities. This is a cancer our country must eliminate, and if we are going to survive. I believe we need to somehow hold these liberal educators accountable for the damage that they have caused to our country. I do not understand why they say here they hate American way of life. They do not believe in our Constitution and want to rid of it and implement a socialist society. Somebody should tell them to move to Europe. Unless we find a way of ridding these socialist liberal educators from public schools and universities, our future generations will not be able to experience the wonderful freedom and growth my family has experienced in this great country of ours. I have 3 grandchildren, and I'm equipping them with the truth regarding socialism, globalism, global warming, capitalism, and our God-given rights. I know that when the truth comes out from these investigations, many will realize you are the best president for this nation. Our prayers are with you, your family, and our nation. Sincerely, Mr. and Mrs. James J. Roti. This letter was brought to my attention by your son, Jay, who's very active in our community. And why don't you talk a little bit about how your mom was born in the United States and your dad was born in Italy, and how did all this come about?
Well, my grandmother and grandfather naturally were born in Italy. They migrated to America back in the early 20s. And they got married here in Chicago. And my mother was born in 1920. And she was a citizen. In fact, she was born in 26th and Princeton. I know the address and everything. But my grandmother wasn't too happy during the roaring 20s, if you know what happened, the Al Capone days, the gangsters. She told my grandfather, I want to go back to my parents in Italy and raise my child there. So they made a deal. My grandfather says, fine, Teresa, you go back. I'll send money. We'll take care of it. I'll come and visit you twice, a year, and I will send you packages and everything. So they went back. That was the lifestyle. My mother, finally, when she was back, I think she was I don't know how old she was when she got married. I don't have that. But anyway, she met my dad there. And then they got married in 1941. I was born in 1942. My dad then got drafted. The Italian army sided with Hitler, Mussolini, who was a socialist, drafted all the young men. And so my father left before I was born. He was captured in Africa. When the war was over, he came home. I was 3.5 years old. It was the first time he seen me. The problem was that Italy was economically devastated, and now we didn't know how to support the family. So one of his brothers was in France. He worked in a coal miner, and so he decided to move his family to France, northern part of Lorraine. In fact, I remember the small town was called Marange, you know. And so we went to France, and that was in 1946. We lived roughly 6 years till 1952. And in 1952, the immigration opened up in America, and my grandfather used to write us letters how great America was, and he says, someday we're gonna have you come over. And since my mother was a citizen, it wasn't too hard. The only requirement was that my father had to have a job secured to support his family. You just didn't come to America if you couldn't support your family.
So you mean to tell me that your family came here and didn't expect to get anything for free?
No, there was no support, no free stuff. In fact, our grandfather made that very clear. And so we came, and we basically lived with my grandfather in a 4-room apartment with, at that time we had 5 kids. And my parents, they had to sleep on a sofa bed in the living room. I slept with my grandfather and my sisters all in one room. That was a lifestyle. Eventually, we were able to buy a home around 24th and Princeton, and because my father was a carpenter by trade, I helped him. I learned the trade a little bit, and now we had our own home. This was the great dream of America, which we did not realize in Italy or in France.
Jim, when we're talking, my brain is going to what was like coming here at age 10, and what's the difference between here and Europe at age 10?
You know, when we landed and we're coming into the New York Harbor and Ellis Island, the first thing that really got me was the Statue of Liberty. How awesome it was. And I had a little statue that my grandfather had sent us, you know, when I was in France. And I said, oh my goodness, this is really a great country. In fact, as the ship docked, all the people that were coming with us, they knelt down and they prayed and thanked God that they finally made it here to America. The other thing that I noticed is we drove from New York to Chicago in a 1952 Chevy. And it was my grandfather and his brother. The brother owned a car. And when I saw the car, I says, oh, we can own a car too? You know, my father never owned a car in Italy or in France. We had bicycles, you know. So that was really an experience that was great. Yes, the other thing was that we didn't have washrooms in France or in Italy. In Italy, people had to go in the field. In France, we didn't have a washroom in our apartment. It was a community in the apartment that everybody had to use. So when we went to my uncle's house and I saw a washroom, you know, and everything, I said, man, this is luxury here. You know, and then when I went through the supermarket, the stores, to see all the goods that were available compared to what was happening in Europe, I said, man, thank you, Lord. I says, we're in the right place.
You know, Jim, it just baffles me that people that come here don't want to assimilate. And then after reading the letter numerous times, you go really deep into the educational system. And right now, when I look at it, it's not like it was when I grew up, and it's definitely not what you're talking about. So what do you think is going on currently, and how can it be fixed?
One of the things that I was impressed with when we came and I started the school system, I had to go to third grade, because I didn't know the English language, but I knew all the mathematics. And I was impressed with the way the teachers were dedicated. We had to stand up. I had to learn the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag. We had a prayer. We started the class always with the respect to the flag and the American country of ours. But what I've seen the changes over the course of, now I can say 60 years, is that slowly that disappeared. Even when my kids were going to, I sent them to private schools, all of them, except for the last two. When they came and we moved to Homer Glen, they went to a public school system. And it wasn't the same, during that time. And of course now it's even worse. I mean, we kicked God out of the school system. We stopped the prayer. We don't even recite the Pledge of Allegiance of the flag in today's. So, yeah, that's one of the biggest changes that I've noticed.
Jim, I've been listening to you talk, and you have a lot of experience. And I'm just curious, what do you think is the direction that our country's headed now?
Steve, that's a good question. Let me explain a little bit how I educated myself on what's happening in this country. Back in 1958, there was a book that was written by Cleon Sukin called The Naked Communist. It described 45 key steps how communism and socialism takes over a country. I read that book, we went through it. Then there was also one of the things of the 45, the key elements were, we have to control the educational system, communism, he says. We have to get in there and brainwash students with communist propaganda. That is happening today, Steve. In fact, after that book was written, if we go back to the 60s, there was a gentleman by the name of Saul Alinsky who wrote the 8 Steps for Radicals, how to take over a state and convert it to socialism. And he was a community organizer in the city of Chicago. And his steps covers what the communists, naked communists, 45 goals, how to convert a nation. You can see it was a slow process. And it even goes back to Khrushchev when he said, we will bury you from within without firing a shot. But if you remember during the Kennedy situation, the Cuban crisis, we thought we were going to have nuclear war, and then Khrushchev backed off because the president stood up to him. And after that, he gave a speech that said that we can't expect Americans to jump in from capitalism into communism right away. We have to give them small dosage of socialism. He says, and that's how you do it. And that's what has happened during the past 60 years, since the 60s. Slow but process. Slow but process. Well, today we have, the problem we have today in our school system. And that's why I told President Trump, I says, unless we can control the educational system for young people, we're only a few generations away from becoming a communist nation.
Jim, one thing I don't get, how did we get so far negative in this country without anybody even knowing what was going on?
Steve, that's a good question. Let me use an analogy, very simple for people to understand how we got here without anybody noticing. Take a pot of water, put it on the stove, cold water, and then put a frog in there. The frog is going to feel comfortable. They ain't going to jump out. And then turn the heat on, slow cooking, not right away. That frog is going to stay in the water while it goes through all the different degrees, and it's going to stay there even when it's boiling. It ain't going to jump out because it got used to the system. That's exactly what happened in America. We got so used to the small dosage of socialism that now we think it's normal.
Jim, what you're saying is absolutely true. They're taking this country slowly, and it's mostly through the educational system and the media. And you didn't mention that, but I'm sure that's part of the whole deal. But I just want to say thank you very much for coming here. And, maybe we can sit down again and do it a second time, go deeper into what your feelings are about the country.
Thank you, Steve, for having me, and I look forward if you ever want to discuss this issue in more detail next time. Thank you.
And to our viewers, thank you for joining us to Up Close and Personal. My name is Steve Balich, and God bless you.